Hi, this is Jeremy with your Big Boy Toys Tip of the Week. In this week's tip, we're going to go over how to solder a Deans connector. First step is to clean your iron so that the tip is really shiny. It'll allow better heat transfer. Next is to strip just a small amount of rubber away from the wire, so you just have a tiny bit of wire. I think the biggest mistake most people make is they strip away too much rubber. Then you have a whole bunch of wire that you have to try and insulate afterwards. Next step is if you dip your wire in a little bit of flux, it'll help the solder flow into the wire a little bit better and give you a little bit better joint. Another tip to a really good solder joint is you want to start off with really good high quality solder similar to this Novak silver solder. The silver is a very good conductor of electricity and will give you a very good joint. Next step is you want to add a little bit of solder to a soldering iron, just to the tip, and what that'll do is it'll allow better heat transfer. Next, you want to put your soldering iron onto the wire and from the top hold your solder. Do this until the wire gets hot enough for the solder to flow into it. As the solder's flowing in, do it until the wire is completely saturated. Then you want to take a little bit of solder and you want to add it to your Deans connector. Next, I want to clean this tip of my soldering iron off again. Get all that excess solder off. Then, with my wire that I've just tinned, I want to put a little bit of shrink wrap on it. And then with my soldering iron cleaned again, I will hold the wire on top of the Deans plug and apply heat. After a few seconds, the solder on the wire and the solder on the Deans plug will flow together and become one. When it does, you can remove the heat and give it a second to cool. After it cools, I can take it out of my vise. Next, I want to get a heat gun. We'll plug it in. I'll give my wire a second to cool because I want the heat shrink to be able to get all the way over the joint before it starts shrinking. If it starts to shrink prematurely because my wire is hot, sometimes it can be difficult to get the shrink wrap onto where it needs to be. After it's significantly cooled, I'll pull my heat shrink over the joint where you can't see the joint anymore, and with my heat gun I will heat it up until the heat shrink shrinks around it and creates a tight fit. And one other, I guess obvious thing, but I need to point out, is make sure on the black wire you go to the negative wire and the red wire you do it on the spot that's marked with the plus. And this has been your Big Boy Toys Tip of the Week.